By the end of this hour, you'll understand not just what Fabric does, but why the problem it solves are real, costly, and urgent in these industries. So let's get going with that. And so I'm gonna hand it over to Girish to introduce themselves and also introduce our guests on call today.
Thank you, Alicia, for warm welcoming, as well as thank you everyone for trusting our process and joining our calls. It is really mean to us because whatever we are preparing is only for you to get more knowledge on what we are doing, right? So to just give you background of me, my name is Girish Govilkar. I have been with the IT industry more than 15 years right now, and mostly work in the data related projects. And with data, I have completed more than 10 projects right now with respect to data integration, data visualization, and other stuff. I have been with more on the Microsoft side of stack. So I have worked starting from the MSBI, SQL, MSBI, VB, and all till right now. You can say Fabric and everything else with the Databricks and Snowflake. So I know most part of the world of data, whatever it is used at the Microsoft side, and how it is connected, how we can correlate that with the other system as well. Right? So that's my main technical stack. On the other thing is I have been founded the SkillEase because I see the gap, what people learn and what actually industry use, right? So what happens is there is a big gap I can see, and I want to fill that gap. Okay, and that's the reason we have own SkillEase, where we have the members who are performing the trainings are at least having 10 years of experience in that field. So that's our goal. With this, I would like to hand over to Shashank to provide his brief intro. Shashank, over to you.
Yeah, hi, good morning, everyone. I'm here from Calgary. Big background about myself. I started my career back in insurance in India in 2012 in actuarial and risk analytics. I worked there for about 5 years, mostly in life insurance and a little bit in wealth management services, financial services. And then I moved to the US to do my master's in business analytics. I wanted to learn more about data and how I can use my background in other ways within analytics. So I ended up then working in the pharma industry in management consulting for about 4 years. So I ended up working in a lot of different therapy areas, and usually in forecasting and commercial analytics. And most of my career, I've been mostly been doing data analytics for like solving business problems. So I've been closer to the business than to the technical side or the architecture side, like Girish. So I can try to bring in a different perspective today. So yeah, looking forward to this.
Great. Thank you, Shashank.
All right, I suppose the ball's in my court now. Thank you for those wonderful introductions, Girish and Shashank, and very welcome. I am super excited to hear from Shashank, and always such a pleasure to hear from Girish as well. So without much ado, let's get going. So before we begin, what do we have in store for you today? So quickly go over that. But again, you folks have been really nice into already following the housekeeping bits. But as a moderator, it's my duty. Once again, mute yourself if you're not wanting to speak. We understand it is weekend and you're probably doing multiple tasks while also listening to here on call, and very much appreciate that. So feel free to mute yourselves. You can be on camera or off. That's up to you. Feel free to ask questions, drop them in the chat. We will be addressing them live as far as possible, and there will be a Q&A at the end as well. Now, talking about what's in store for you, this session today will be recorded and will be shared with you. So if you have to step away or you're not able to make it throughout, don't worry about it. It will be in your inbox within 24 hours. Again, all your questions will be addressed throughout this 60-minute session, as well as there will be a separate Q&A for anything that's not been addressed towards the end. And again, this time, feel free to use the chat as you please. There will be lots of free resources that will be coming your way. So everyone on this call today will receive the Microsoft Fabric Architect Roadmap 2026, which is a compilation PDF that's put together by SkillEase. This that is a 24-week skills progression map. Yours free for showing up today. What that is will be briefly discussed towards the end of this session as well, if you're interested. So stay for that. So we will be spending about 2 minutes on Fabric Architect program. So please be patient, stay with us, and lots of exciting things coming your way. All right, with that, here's how we will be spending the next 60 minutes. So before we get into that, I have realized that we've not broken any ice today. So use the chat to drop in your name, or if your name is what we can see on Google Meets, then where you're joining us from, what part of the day it is, or what you're excited about today's session, just so we get to know you. And yeah, so I am going to open up my chat, pause for a minute or two to give everybody a chance. I see Shashank's been on top of it and has said a hello there, dropped in their LinkedIn link. Thank you so much, Shashank, for doing that. Right, giving a moment to everybody on call. I know sometimes it can be hard to find where the chat function is even. So I'm like, where's the button? Okay, just to make sure we don't run over time and being respectful of everybody's time on a weekend here, I will encourage you to just say hello when you're ready. So I see hello from Kunja. I'm from Toronto. Welcome. Love from Vancouver. Hi, Love. I'm from Vancouver here myself. The weather says it's not going to be too sunny, but I can see the sun creeping out a little, which I'm not complaining about. So yeah. Omkar from Copenhagen. Wow, we have people from all over. Yeah. Hanai from Morocco. I'm sorry if I'm not pronouncing it well. Hanani, I suppose. Sorry about that. Hello from Vancouver as well. In there, welcome. All right, perfect. Keep the chat buzzing. I love it when it is. So quickly going over the agenda for today. First, Shashank will give us 5-minute map of each of the 2 domains, which is the pharma and insurance, and what data looks like in those 2 domains. Then Girish will interview Shashank as an architect. And these are real questions. Girish has prepared them, so it's not an easy game. Shashank, please buckle up there, not the polite ones. After that, each cluster, we go deep into 2 or 3 specific use case per domain. So Shashank will tell us the real story, and Girish is the architect's perspective on what a well-designed platform does differently. And we close with a summary and 2 minutes on the Microsoft Fabrics architecture program. Just to give you context, the Microsoft architecture program is everything you're about to hear in the domain context that shapes Fabric architecture decisions. So in MFAP, we use insurance and pharma as real-world case studies throughout levels 1 and 2. So these are the programs that SkillEase has launched. This is not a theoretical program. You learn architecture by solving the exact problems that Shashank is about to describe. And that is why Girish and SkillEase has brought him here today to give you some context and real-life situations. And with that, I will pass it over to Girish.
Thank you, Alicia, for providing so much detailed intro and warming up the audience. Let me just share my screen and let me know once you're able to see the screen. Today, I will make sure that I don't talk much. I want Shashank to talk more because we want to get the knowledge from him instead of what we are going to do. Okay. So before we dive much deeper, Shashank, can you please provide us an 10,000 feet overview of these 2 data domains, pharma as well as insurance?
Yeah, surely. So like we've been discussing and how we got connected. I think insurance and pharma are very unique in the kind of data challenges and the data landscape that they face, because of the number of systems they have to manage. They are very regulated. They have to do a lot of reporting for different purposes, and they also have to make sure that they're also getting everything right for the customers. So it's a very complicated kind of a data scenario or a data situation for them to manage. And as more and more data is coming in, this problem is becoming even more complex, or something which is going to get even bigger as we get more and more data in these industries. So I think my experience has been that it's not always just analytical skills or data skills is enough. You need to know the business. You need to know where the data is going, how it's been used, and I think that's something which is very unique about these two industries that I've been good experience.
Agreed. So whenever you are thinking on something with respect to implement and you want to become an architect, at that time you don't limit yourself on the technical side of the world. You need to understand what exactly the business is doing and how you can integrate those business stuff into technical things, right? Then only it is more convenient for you to be grow in the architectural world. Agree to your point as well, Shashank. And what I would like to ask is, let's say for example, if we have an developer in the community, right, and they want to leverage their knowledge, okay, so what core thing of the business they need to focus on at this beginning, because that's what the junior developer lack with where to focus on.
So I think you probably need to like a lot of times you'll probably be focused on a very small task which has been given to you, which might be a lot of like technically like heavy, but at the same time you need to probably also know where that analysis is going, where is that whatever you're doing, who might be the stakeholder. So I think that part is something which is probably not everybody thinks when they're studying or when they're learning that skill, and maybe in the college or they're doing it like doing some course which might not give them that level of exposure. So in this industry, what I noticed was that everything was about like, what is the application? Where is this really having an impact? And I think understanding that was something that always was the learning aspect for anybody who would work in this domain like that, using any kind of data. So by developer, I mean an analyst, right?
Yeah, anyone. It can be analyst, it can be a junior data engineer, or it can be a Power BI report designer.
Yeah, right. Makes sense. Yeah. So that's what. So I feel they have to know, like, I think connecting it to the bigger picture, that is something which gives more experience and more like learning.
Yeah, agreed. And what makes you different from your peers is if you go deeper to that particular task, whatever you are assigned to you, then it will focus more on what you're delivering.
Correct.
Got it.
So what I used to like, if you keep asking the right questions, I mean, obviously sometimes you might not have that much time, you might not get that much like training on the subject matter because you might just be asked to do a job, but more questions you ask and more like familiarity you get with the business, the better you can get with what you do, because then you can actually do it better.
Yeah, got it, definitely. Now, what we will do is we'll just start focusing on one domain at a time, right? And we'll just have more questions on that particular domain. Now, I would like you to just give a big landscape information on insurance, right? So what is the insurance as a business and what are their core things we need to understand? So can you just give us, let's say, 2 to 3 minutes of brief overview of insurance industry?
Yeah. I think you have it really well set up here on the screen here. So I'll try to just quickly touch on the high level. Like, so I think for people when they hear insurance, it can mean a lot of different things from a normal individual, because it can be like life insurance, which probably is the first thing a lot of people think about. But then you could also have PNC in Canada or in India and other places might be called like general insurance, which is like your home, auto, which is more like insuring your assets or something which is not related to life insurance. And then you also have something in between, which is like health insurance, which cannot be in itself a different entity itself. And then there is also like reinsurance and other stakeholders who also work a lot with data. They might not directly be working with individuals. So that is also a very very data heavy aspect of this whole industry. They might be working with insurance's data, they might be supporting insurers, and then there are regulators. And so there's a lot of stakeholders involved, but from a company perspective, those are the channels or those are the kind of businesses. And then like I used to work a lot in life insurance, and like I think it might be true in all other types of insurance companies too, that they'll have a lot of different systems. So they might have a system to like manage the policy data, which might be going on for like 20, 30 years. For somebody from like somebody bought a policy at age 30 can go till age 100. So it can be like for many, many years, decades. And there could be like claim systems, there's underwriting systems, there's actuarial kind of analysis, which might be going on. So all of that can all be very, very separate and kind of in their own world and within the company. So they can be very, very kind of not just departments, but they can be like really different from each other, might not even be connected. And then there's a lot of regulation in insurance, like any other financial service industry, like banking or any this thing. There's a lot of like reporting needs from a regulatory perspective. There's a lot of solvency, and like you need to be sure that you're financially sound and everything is going well. Because if something, the insurance company is not safe, then how can you trust that they'll be able to take care of their customers? Like in terms of insurance, they'll be able to pay the claims and all of that. So there's a lot of regulatory focus. And then I think from then our focus today from a data perspective, like there's a lot of like data challenges, like because of the just because of the complexity of the business, there's so much going on, and then there are so many different systems, and then because there also has to be that level of accuracy, and like you need to really get things right. So the data is, it's a challenge in itself. So I think that is something which we can deep dive more. But yeah.
Got it. Got it. So with that, right? So let's say, for example, if someone is very new to that domain, or someone is working on different domain and they are moving to the insurance project for the sake of the company, right? Now, what is the one thing about insurance data that surprises most of the data engineer or Power BI reporter or anyone who is new to that domain? So what is the one thing that they just
So
get surprise of it?
So in the life insurance space, primarily, one thing I always thought was that you may not always have a lot of like big data, or like a lot of people when they think of analysis, they start thinking about like we'll do all this fancy machine learning, or we'll do some data analysis, which is like you can play with a lot of data, which might not always be the case. But I think the more kind of challenges that I used to notice was like getting things to be accuracy and like matching stuff. Like for example, like you have to say do a claim payout, or you have to do some transaction, everything has to match. It has to be a to match to the like maybe to the decimal point, to the cent, this thing. So if there is not that level of like accuracy, the policyholder can lose money, the company can lose money. So the thing is that that accuracy is something which is probably more paramount, not necessarily like just, oh, you can do some fancy analysis, you're working with big data. Like maybe if you work in a tech environment, say Google has a lot more data, so they can do a lot more other stuff. But insurance is not big data only; it's other kind of challenges, which is also very unique to the industry, which I think might be something which not everybody might know if they probably have not worked on it before, or that might be new to them.
Got it. Got it. Now let us move our focus much deeper to understand the domain, right? So with the things which you're talking about, data distribution, right? Data is distributed multiple system. So walk me through a typical day in the life of a data team at a mid-size insurer. How the system, I mean, how many system they normally touch, and how the team maintain the overlapping with the version of the same data.
Yeah. So for example, like say you are say when the product has been developed, say for example an insurance product was set up and developed, maybe the actual team has done that in an Excel scenario. They might have done something in their own systems because they were doing all the scenario testing, they were testing out the assumptions, and they were doing it for regulatory approvals and this thing in their own environment. But then for example, when the product is now being like about to be launched and it's going to go into market, then there has to be a whole IT system of, okay, we need to set up a policy administration system, we need to manage the underwriting systems, we need to manage claims, we need to manage so many other stuff. But now what might happen is all of that, like all of those systems will also have to be tracked, because after that, the actual team will also need to get the information about, okay, what actually happened with those policies. Did we get claims? Did the policy continue paying the premiums? Did they lapse? Or there can be so many like events that can happen for the while the policy is in force. So those things have to be managed in a proper manner. But what if now what I used to notice sometimes was the information was not even like accurately tracked or accurately even kind of managed. So how could someone within the company like say, oh, this is what our real scenario today is like, okay, these many policies sold, these many policies are like, okay, actively paying premiums, these policies had a claim. We can't even like have a reporting this thing. So how can then the teams rely on the data they have in house to do the projections or do the reportings for the regulatory needs, or also to like how can they do it for the customers? So like I think like those systems are not like talking to each other can become a big challenge. So I feel sometimes people are like scrambling to like, oh, my system says this, your system says this, and then there's a lot of time wasted in like triangulating or like like this kind of source of truth, or like, oh, so point is like your word against mine sort of a thing, or if something is like I said, it's not even matching, then what number do you trust? This thing, right? So maybe there must be some issue in terms of like setting up the calculations, some kind of system which kind of wasn't, they were not communicating to each other, and then the end results is when the things got like kind of surfaced, but it didn't really come out at the time of like setting up, or like there was no like kind of handshake between the systems or the teams or departments.
Yeah, so I think with that, what I understand is what we need to do is set up a proper data governance as well as a data lineage in place, so that we need to know that how the data is getting flowed into the systems, and then we can backtrack those data silos issues accordingly, right? And that's how we build an analytics using Fabric, right? So we define, okay, this claim system is the source of truth for the claims data, while the customer data is present in the actual when the enrollment has been done, not when the claim has been done. And then we can correlate those information together in order to rectify the data properly.
Correct.
So I got, I got your overview, and with that, I would like to ask you some more question with respect to the regulatory compliance. So I know that you said about solvency regulatory, right? So can you just provide us some brief about those regulatory compliance, and are those optional, and we can
No,
just
no,
get
no,
rid of
no.
it?
Actually, that is like a very fundamental kind of requirement. Like companies have to maintain a certain amount of cash reserves or assets to be able to back when based on the amount of business they're writing. There's like a lot of like regulatory requirements, and they can vary from country to country or from kind of business you're writing. They can be very different for like say so a product they might be writing is risky, then they might have to do more reserves. If there might be some other products they might not have that much reserve needs. So it's like a kind of a security which the company has to be stable and secure to be able to serve the customer. So solvency is more like a the system with a framework which they have to follow. So a lot of like recent like this thing companies have like started creating where I think solvency is now kind of very uniform across a lot of countries. So they try to follow a lot of like best practices so that it's as organized as possible. So maybe the US, the European, all these other like major regulators have kind of made sure that the systems are in place so that everybody is following as much best practices as possible. Obviously, there can be some variation here and there. So I think a lot of the regulatory like requirements are around like maintaining good health for the insurance company. And I think the good health check is you're maintaining solvency. Some companies will claim to try to have maybe say the requirement is say 100%. They'll be like, oh, we're 125%, we're 150%, and we are still profitable. So they can kind of claim that that's a better what do you say, a better security or better like a stability than say 125% or just 100%, right? So they always try to keep a margin in this thing.
Got it.
Yeah.
Got it. So I would like to understand that with the insurance, right, there might be some fraud claim happening, right? So how do the insurance company recognize those claim? And let's say, for example, if you have sat inside the insurance claim operations, right? So how is it? How do you look? How do you see the fraud detection actually works in day to day?
So I feel like, again, the accuracy becomes a very big factor there. So if say you decline a claim, which is not a fraud claim, but the cost of like doing declining a claim which might not be a fraud claim is a lot higher, because then that starts creating a lot of like reputational issue. A lot of people would be like, oh, I did everything right, but the insurance company did wrong to me. Like there'd be a lot of like those kind of risks for the company. And at the same time, they also can get into a lot of like regulatory and compliance issues, because a policyholder can go and complain that, hey, I have all the documentation, but my claim is getting rejected, or because it's been flagged as a fraudulent claim. So you need to have accuracy, but also the company can't give out the claim, because they also have to be very careful about their own financial this thing. Why should they pay a claim which they know is someone is trying to like cheat them, right? It's actually fraud is like a cheating, right? Like you're trying to misrepresent, say, somebody is like how like for example in a car insurance situation, whenever say you were in an accident, there'll be someone who'll go and like do a actual physical audit to see whether you actually had an accident. What if somebody like had a small accident but they wanted to get a bigger damage, so they probably did it like you. So you have to investigate. So there's investigation that has to be happening. But a lot of this, I feel, in the modern days can be captured in data sets. So you can have patterns. You can actually have like you can have a system that can flag like kind of in real time. So also you need speed, because you can't have someone waiting just because the investigation is taking so long. People will then start getting frustrated, right? Like, oh, I've been waiting for my claim. What happened? Especially like in a health insurance and a life insurance situation, like say someone has passed away, they need to have a claim fast. Like they want to wait for months. Then that doesn't help. Like someone is in like real trouble, like somebody just passed away, they're looking to have that financial support, or in a health insurance situation, they have to pay medical bills, right? So there has to be some speed also. So I feel those two things have to like be balanced. But again, 100% accuracy is not possible, but I feel data can help get as close as possible, and having the right systems in place in terms of how do you implement it is probably even more important. So I feel how the companies can use the data is probably the art here. It's not necessarily just, oh, you just follow the data blindly. You also have to sometimes have someone making the right decisions. So but the decisions can be informed by the data. So I feel that systems can be set up which a lot of companies like, I think operations is probably the hardest part for an insurance company, because they are doing so much, and there can also be like a lot of time gap, right? Like a policy started many years back, and then you're like scrambling for some information. So if all the information is also not ready, like how can you even verify some of that stuff? So my question comes is like, how do you even determine whether the fraud is there? So you need to have everything as well like organized as possible. I think that is the best way to do it.
Got it. So with the fraud thing, right? So let's say, for example, does it impact the underwriting as well? Because I see that underwriting is something that insurer make the decision whether to provide an insurance to the person or to the company or to the vehicle, right? So where is the biggest data gap for an underwriter today?
So yeah, so underwriting is a very, I mean, it's a very, very important aspect of the whole system there. Like, so for example, when the product has been developed, you can only do as much at the time of developing the product. You can have, okay, these are the like the features which will have. This will be the benefits that the insurance will provide. This is what the price might be looking like and everything. But the underwriter is where the risk management is happening. They have to finalize and they have to determine whether they can actually insure the individual or the actual risk or not. So the underwriting becomes kind of your kind of a filter, which is basically, but it has to be again, if you are going to be very, very straight and you're going to be so complicated, it's going to take again time, which is going to make it hard for, like, say someone has put in an application, they would want to get
Yeah,
an application approved. What if it's going to take like uh, many weeks, or it's going to take a lot of time for the application to get approved? A lot of people will not have a good experience. They're like, what happened? I started my application process, and why is it taking so long? So it has to be fast, but it also has to have a level of accuracy to have that level of trust, because if they don't do their job well and they end up like having a lot of bad, say like lives, or like bad policies related to a lot of claims, that will then hurt the company also. So there can be a lot of like big implications, but also small operational implications. So there's a lot of like from like granularity from like a ground level, like day-to-day activity, but also the big picture. So underwriting becomes a very like important like whole kind of a system in itself. But I feel that can have a much bigger impact on the overall business, because they might be making decisions, but they might not even know some of the results. Like, for example, say the business was written today, but the claims will start happening, say, sometime later. But say
yeah,
a claim will also happen, but the claim might not get reported even later. So how would you
got
even know like what is the actual like performance of the underwriting system, which is happening, which will the actual results are coming, say, later. So it is, you're doing it something for the future, right? So you need to either have some information which you are basing it on, or you're actually tracking it so well that you can keep make real time decisions to keep improving it. This. So I think that
got
is
it.
the advantage.
Got it. So I believe that we got an overall picture of what exactly the insurance is and what are the big different components of the insurance we need to understand, like data silos issue, regulatory compliance, underwriting, fraud detection. So
Mhm.
what I feel based on my experience is whenever we design any analytical system, what we do is we try to get as much as more information from multiple system, right? And then once we have that information, then we can analyze those information and get the right insight out of it, right? So whether
Mhm.
the customer satisfaction is not there, or whether the claims has been rejected, what was the claim percentage got rejected, why was the claims got rejected, right? So all those things can be done using data. And it is said that, right, data is a new oil for the any industry, right?
Yeah.
And even though if you want to implement something with respect to AI, data is a backbone, right? If you don't have right data, you cannot implement right AI system in place. And that's where most of the company they try to focus to clear the data or try to frame the data in such a way that it is consumable to the downstream application. It can be the business analyst, it can be a decision maker, it can be an executive community, or it can be an AI system which is made to help the operations, right? So
Yeah.
all those things shake hand with each other such that we had proper system in place.
Correct.
And what we can do with the fabric is we can get those insights by creating a proper data governance in place. As because what happens in fabric, we have multiple sets of data governance. One is at the endorsement level, whether this data has been endorsed and it can be used or not. And the second thing is data labeling, right? So what happens is when we create a semantic model, at that time we label that, okay, this one is the sensitive, this one is company restricted, or this one is publicly available. So based on that particular governance, people can either access or they cannot access the data,
Mhm.
underlying data. So that's what I would like to give you, give the people over here a brief overview what we can do with the fabric. Now, with that, I would like to move to our second domain
Mhm.
is with respect to pharma. So can you just provide us what exactly the pharma has, and with that detail, right? Just provide us a high level overview. What are the different verticals we need to focus in the pharma, and then we can deep dive together.
Mhm. So yeah, so I think very similar to insurance, but one kind of very unique feature that I particularly noticed was the data in the pharma industry is probably a lot like the big data challenges which you might look at, not necessarily in every situation, but in most cases, you will be dealing with a lot more information, a lot of different kind of data sets, which might not be this case in insurance. So that is something which was more kind of a feature of the pharma industry. I used to focus a lot more on the commercial analytics, so I think that might be a case more so on that side. But across the three areas which is showing up on the screen here, like you can think of like how safe pharma and life sciences is serving a patient. So their job is to create a therapy or a drug to help a patient when they need it, when they're sick, or it's a treatment for a lifestyle condition. So the goal is for the company very similar to insurance, but here instead of developing an insurance product, they're developing a drug. So the drug has to go through a lot of like a whole process to get approved, and that is something which is called R&D, research and development, and it's also can be considered as like clinical trials, because they have to like first come up with an idea. Okay, we're trying to solve for a certain kind of a condition or health issue, and then we need to like start testing it out. So then they'll have to start maybe like creating the science and the technology behind it, and then you need to like figure out how do we really go and start testing it. Maybe there'll be a series of steps involved. Maybe you start with some kind of an animal testing, and then you actually start going to human trials. So there's a lot of process part of that. So there's a lot of data and a lot of systems involved in building this thing, and then you need to get it approved from the regulator. So in the US, you have the FDA. In every country, there's a regulator to get the drug approved. And then there's also a lot of regulations and safety, because they also don't want the drug to have kind of any bad events. So like they don't want side effects. They don't want any adverse reaction. Like, or the drug was supposed to actually help or cure the disease or help them get healthier, but then actually is creating more issues. So you need to be able to report those things. So there's actually systems in place for that as well. So there's a lot of this thing. So that is something which is a pharma company has to do this, not just because they have to look after their reputation, but they also have to take care of the person's health. Because what if the drug is actually hurting their potential customer? Then this thing. What if the doctors don't know how to like actually prescribe or use the drug properly? So they need to be on the top of all of that. This thing. So it's kind of their responsibility. And then lastly, commercial analytics is everything else that's happening when the drug is actually in the market. So then you might need to like look at like how do you make yourself more competitive versus your competitors? How do you get better like better opinion about yourself and with the doctors? You have a better brand with the patients. How do you track your sales team's performances and everything? So there can be so much reporting, and then you also have to do a lot of forecasting, because all these insurance companies have to report to the like every quarter they have to report their businesses. So they have to actually predict how many drugs will be sold in the next 3 months, 6 months, 1 year. So that is also something they have to actually this thing. So a lot of these pharma companies prices can go like stock prices can like really be volatile, because just one drug launch can change their projection completely. And if the drug launch doesn't work or the product is not actually performing, then they can have a lot of loss, like a bad like losses, because they can lose a lot of value. So there's a lot of like implications of the data from a commercial analytics perspective.
Got it. Got it. So with that, right, you have explained us about different verticals of pharma, like R&D, clinical trials, regulatory compliance, and commercial analytics, right? So let's say, for example, if someone is new, again, I'm just coming back to my earlier question, which I asked for the insurance domain. What is the one thing the junior developer or a data engineer might see when they join the project or the company for the data project, right? So what is the one thing that surprises, or they they misunderstand those things in the pharma side?
So yeah, so I think from personal experience also, like I moved to the pharma industry with a lot more experience. I wasn't like starting it as a junior, or I wasn't starting it as my first job in my career. But even then, I used to like find it very overwhelming, because it was very complex, it's very vast. So within the company itself, like you could like, so if you were to work in a bigger pharma company, they could actually like have a single therapy area, and they itself is like a single company within that company. Like it's like that big. So the layers and the complexity involved in the business is probably very unique to this thing to the industry. Whereas like because of the amount of information involved, and because of the amount of layers and amount of departments and the teams that you might be actually working with when you're like trying to deal with like even any part of this business, basically, right? So say basically you could be working in say oncology, which is just cancer. Then you could be working in a vaccines industry, which is probably completely different. They're not even connected to each other. They might even have different data sets. So if you move from one therapy area means like overall kind of, so they have to kind of create a bucket based on like what kind of medical condition or what kind of disease they treat. So they kind of create them into buckets. So there could be something called cardiovascular is anything to do with heart, immunology is anything to do with immune diseases, stuff like that. So the complexity is so big that I felt like even though I might have worked in like 5, 6 of those therapy areas, I still think that there's so much else I could not have explored, because every time there's almost like you're learning everything again or anything new.
Yeah, I I think we have one question from Omkar. Uh, Alicia, can you please read out if you are
Yeah.
if you
Yeah,
can?
I can definitely. Yeah. So thank you, Omkar, for asking the question, and it's for Girish. So says how data engineers work on pharma commercial analytics part, how they work with the business, like starting point, progress, and end result.
Okay, so with that, this reminds me about one of my projects I did as a senior developer, I would say, not as an architect. I was working in one of the marketing client, pharma marketing company called Skyscape, and it was taken over by Business Interactive, and now it is called as WebMD. So what they used to do is they used to send a survey monkey to the customers who have been either vaccine or who have been either been in the clinical trials, right? So and based on that, they used to get an insight of what went well and what did not went well, right? So this is how normally we used to do on the pharma side.
Yeah, that's called primary data.
Yeah,
Yeah, so
again.
you're directly getting the information from the patient or the doctor, so that's primary data. But a lot of commercial analytics would be like secondary data, like claim analysis, what has actually happened after the drug has been administered. So all of that data gets captured in like medical records, and that data is then analyzed. So a lot of commercial analytics would be on that as well.
Yeah, definitely. So there are multiple points of data capture we do. Is first is where the clinical trials were there. Based on that, we get the data capture. Then we get the data capture after the clinical trials done and after the dosages are applied to actual customer, right? And based on that, we get those. We create those KPIs and we create those analytics out of it. I hope
Mhm.
Omkar answer. I mean, I'm able to answer that question. Okay, thank you. Now, with that, I would like to dive deeper, Shashank. I hope we get similar question what Omkar is asking, and I would like to ask more about clinical trial, right? So, can you just walk me through a journey of a patient, right? Uh, I mean, can you just walk me through a journey from start, like enrolling the patient for the trial, and what we submit to the FDAs in US, right? So, what do you think about the data is getting lost or transform, or what do you think of that
Mhm.
particular things?
Yeah. So yeah. So I feel there's gonna be like so many like manual steps, or actually you could actually have a situation where a lot of say someone is working in labs or someone is working with patients, but they're not probably a data person, or they're not even worried about capturing the data. They're doing their part of the job of what they were told to do as part of the trial or the process. Then what happens is that what if that data is not captured properly? How can you then actually do any kind of analysis, or how can you actually report it properly? Yes, I mean they might be just doing it for that one moment to like report it to that, okay, we need to get this trial approved, so we do it. But
Yeah.
then question is that data getting really stored anywhere? Can we do an analysis later? Is the company using it for any kind of insights to do it better next time? Because they might be developing a lot of drugs, they might not be only developing one drug. So can we use that knowledge in other ways? So I feel that the data capture might not always be uh, done in a more way of thinking of, hey, we are building our own insights, we are setting up our own systems. And then I think a lot of other challenges is a lot of this can be very secretive. Like they might not even want a lot of this information to even become public, because they don't want anyone to know that, hey, someone is even working on a drug. So they might not even have that level of like, okay, we can have this publicly available, or we can have everybody in the company know about it, right? Because
Yeah.
that can also start creating a lot of regulatory issues. They can also start impacting their, like if it's a listed company, then that information can be like, oh, you're working on some new drug, and then people can start speculating, right? So like those kind of challenges can also be there. So I think it's a complicated situation for companies to even have all of that information so readily set up in a system. So they'll probably have to do it in a way that only select people can see the data sets, but people at least at the leadership level can actually know, okay, all that information can be used for further drug discovery or improving the process, or actually like reducing the time and making it more efficient. So all of those things. But I feel the process is so complicated that I think even the best data systems will be slow, but a lot of the data systems will still be like very manual or siloed. So I think that.
Uh, and that's what Fabric can help us, right? So with the data silos issue, I like to work on those kind of projects where the data is siloed, because I remember I was working in one of the oil and gas project where we have to get the data from multiple warehouse system, and we need to
Mhm.
integrate those data. And what was happening is the data was same. I mean, the product was same. Like let's say, for example, and oil, right? So it wasn't same oil, but it has been labeled as multiple different labels in different systems. So we want to understand that how we can have a common label across multiple systems and how we can integrate those to help us to do a proper data analytics, right? So I love that part, the particular challenge of the project, and you love when you start working on those kind of projects. I really like that. Now, with respect to the other thing with pharma, right? I have one more question. So how do you think about the data which has been captured in the clinical trial and the data which has been captured for the customer analytics, right? After the survey which we do after the dose has been given. So how the pharma company knows that the particular dose has been given, or how do you think that the pharma company can backtrack those information, or how?
So I think there's a lot of so you cannot have a lot of like patient information because there's a lot of like privacy guidelines. Like I think in the US there's a very strong regulation around HIPAA, which is basically like patient information or that identity cannot be disclosed. So some of these things they do it in like very different kind of like a indirect way. So a lot of the information they are able to track because there was an insurance claim that actually um, got issued because when the drug was bought, you went to the pharmacy, you showed your insurance information, and the insurance company and the data got aggregated at that system. So they are able to then see, okay, the patient is going regularly to keep buying the drugs. For example, somebody has to take, say, a drug for, say, diabetes, and they have to do it, say, regularly. They have to do it, say, a drug every 30 days. So maybe they are going and getting a drug, say, every 3 months. So that means that every month they're going, they probably got rid of they've took all the medicine, and that's when they went back and refilled it. So every time they're refilling, they are able to track whether the patient is actually continuing to take the therapy or not. So that is a kind of a proxy. But then so that's like, I think it's called adherence, and kind of like kind of similar to what is persistency in insurance, where you want like a policyholder like regularly paying their premiums to keep the policy in force. Same thing is in insurance. In pharma, they are going to the pharmacy regularly to get prescribed, or they're going to the doctor regularly to get a new prescription. So that can also be something that can be tracked, because every time the prescription is written, that also can get tracked into the system because there'll be an insurance claim against it. So that's how it works.
So with the compliance which you were talking about, HIPAA, and I think in Canada we have PEPEDA as well. So can just let us know that what granularity we can capture the data. So let's say and it can be available public, right? So for example, if a particular address has been captured, or particular region we can capture, or what, or let's say for example a group of diabetic or group of non-diabetic, right? So what level of information we can capture and we can share it across, or what is the compliance which has in place?
So, I mean, with the patient level data, you are able to get to the level of the patient, but you'll never know who the patient is. So there'll always be kind of, like I said, it'll always be masking because of that.
Okay.
This thing. So you will never know. You'll have an ID, or you'll be able to track it based on that. So some of the analytics could be like you're looking at the patient's journey. Like, okay, they started on the first line of therapy because they just start to say, again, coming back to a diabetes example, because diabetes can progress as you go older and you can get sicker and the diabetes can get more severe, right? So you might start with, say, one line of therapy, which is usually the most common, say a metformin, you get, say, a medicine, and then you move from that to, say, the next line of therapy. So you can actually see how the patient's kind of evolving as they're moving across this thing. So they can actually get healthy also. They might actually stop taking the medicine. So there can be a lot of like those scenarios. So a lot of the data can be tracked at a patient level, but you will never know which patient it is.
Got it.
And then a lot of the data can be like rolled up at a doctor level. So for example, you want to know which doctor is writing. So maybe you can do some analysis like this doctor is writing more patients. So then the company can be like, we need to get the doctor to write our drug, not a competitor drug. So that can be the competition, this thing. So that level of information is there, but I don't think you can even find out who the doctor is, because that also might be protected. But you can find out the doctor by the zip codes. This thing, so you can then this thing, so so those kind of information. So the company will try their best to like use all this information. It's a business intelligence, but they try to make the most of it. So it's very, very like fascinating, like the amount of information that's actually available. Like I said, given how private the whole system is, and there's so much complexity, but they still kind of have created systems to capture those data sets.
Got it. So with that, I would like to also ask one thing on the customer analytics, right? So there are some KPIs I have captured, like sales force effectiveness and market access, brand performance. So what does the commercial pharma data looks like, and where does the analytics may fall short of, right, to providing those KPIs?
So sometimes I feel like, because a lot of these companies again are relying on a third-party data sets, like they cannot capture the whole industry data. They can only capture probably the data that they all have in their system. So they might have a situation where the data is not being captured, is not complete. It's like it could be just say 20% of the full industry, right? You know that,
Yeah.
okay, so for example, in vaccines, you say millions of vaccines were given out, but because we won't even know when the vaccine is gone, people will get it for free. They don't even get a claim. They don't even put it in the system that who got the vaccine. So then the question is, how do you even do analysis on that? So there can be a lot of those kind of challenges where you might not even have the full picture. So you might be making decisions on kind of incomplete information. So that can also create a lot of complexity. If like you just follow blindly, okay, whatever data I have, I'll make a decision. That might also not be close to actual reality. So the actual versus expected can be very, like there's a big variance between the two.
Got it. Got it.
Yeah.
So I think thank you very much for providing that insight. I would like to move to the next part of our conversation because I know that we are already about the time, right? So with that, what I feel is the common root cause or the common cause what both the industry or for most of the industry has is they have to be regulatory compliance. The data is fragmented. The with the data with the huge amount of data, the data processing is it take more times, right? And in order to get the data from multiple systems, we need to have multiple teams in place. So what I feel is with this particular fabric, what we can do is we can provide the governance in place such that the compliance are in place. So for example, if we want to store the data in that particular region, what Microsoft provides is you have to mention those data sets. So it will be stored in that particular region, right? Europe has the GDPR policy where the data should not be moved out of their region, right? So those kind of policies or governance can be implemented with Microsoft tools because they have the governance at the Microsoft level, right? And with the data fragmentation, I think we can identify it using the source of truth, which system has that actual initial data which was created, and then it can be tracked or it can be aligned with other attributes which are required, like claims data. It'll be aligned with the actual insurance, right? So those things we can do with the multiple industry, I would say. So what I've seen is I've been working in multiple domains, right? So the commonality with all those industry and domain is uh, is is they have the data silos issue, they have the regulatory compliance issue, they have the multiple teams issue, and when you start working with the data, you can analyze more in depth. Okay, now now, with that, I would just skip this slide because we are already over the time, and I think most of the things in this slide we had already discussed. If you have any questions specific, you can ask at the end, right? I'll just move forward with this slide, and I'll just see how the fabric can be helped, right? So the data fragmented issue can be using the unified storage structure layer. We can solve using OneLake, right? Then the auditing issue, like data lineage or the immutable source. So those things can be done using delta tables or data logs and the purview, right? So delta tables are something that we once the data is created, we cannot modify that data, right? And with the purview, we can set up the lineage that where exactly the data is coming from and how it is getting stored. And the other things we can apply like PII and regulatory compliance and other stuff. Okay, so what Fabric can do is it has end-to-end analytics from the capturing data from the source to providing analytics of the data with the code layer or with the Power BI report on top of it of the code layer, and it can be also help to analyze the perform the data analytics on multiple stages of the data capture. Now, with that, I would like to move to the next slide, which will provide you an overview of what we are offering with our Microsoft Fabric architectural program. Is we have divided it into two levels, level 1 and level 2. Level 1 is something we are providing in foundational information fabric, as well as we will be doing hands-on experience with the data engineering, data warehousing, and Power BI stuff. We'll be doing a data governance at a basic level, and throughout the course, you'll be able to create either of the project in e-commerce, insurance, or pharma. So that's the thing we are applying for level 1. In level 2, we will be covering more in-depth architectural information on the fabric side, how we can implement the data governance with the use of purview and multi-regions in place. We will also see the details on real-time intelligence and FinOps side, how FinOps can help us to reduce the infrastructure cost of the fabric, right? And also here we are going to perform an end-to-end project either in e-commerce, insurance, and pharma based on the need. right? So this is what we are going to have over the Fabric program. And with that, I would like to hand it over to Alicia. Thank you, Alicia.
Thank you so much, Girish. I'm just going to take charge of the screen now, if I may. Right. Perfect. Thank you. Just wanted to thank Shashank and Girish for the wonderful presentation and all the information. I know that we are a bit over time, but I'm sure our audience is super hooked, and I can see that most of them are still with us. So thank you so much for staying back. We really appreciate you taking the time and joining us today. With that, just wanted to take a moment and offer this wonderful resource to you all today. So if you wish to get a full curriculum of what Girish was just talking in the previous slide, just type MFAP in the chat right now, and the SkillEase team will personally direct message you the full curriculum, the pricing, the cohort start date. So yeah, I'm going to take a pause while you locate the chat button and put in your interest to get that resource. Okay. All right. Also, take this moment to put in any of the questions you might have for Shashank or Girish. Type them in the chat. And again, we do understand that we are running over time, so feel free to drop off if you have to, but stay with us. This is the time you can stay, build some connections, engage with us, ask any questions about anything that was discussed today or the MFAP program that SkillEase has developed. If you really want to privately chat with any of our experts today here, you can reach out to them on LinkedIn. Shashank has already dropped in their profile link in the chat earlier. Our team is very proactive in addressing all your inquiries. So yeah. Thank you, Omkar, for joining. We really hope you enjoyed this session. Lots of thank yous coming in for Girish and Shashank. Once again, you will receive the recording in your inbox. So stay tuned for that. I can see a lot of people who've joined us for the second time. It's so wonderful to see you all. Kushali and Vika, thank you so much, folks. I think that's about it. And we are going to hang out here for a few more minutes if you want to ask us any questions. But yeah, we are done with the core content of today's session. But feel free to hang out, come off of mute. This is your chance to just say hello or ask anything at all.